Hell yeah, too, Mr. Mags here. Today, we will be asking the question, what if every Pokemon region had a ghost type gym leader? Now, fun fact about the ghost typing, it is actually the type that has the least number of Pokemon attributed to it. And that's honestly kind of a shame because I feel there are a ton of really cool ghost types, but I feel like the ghost typing as a whole just hasn't really reached its full potential. There are a lot of really cool concepts and honestly typings that I feel they could do a lot with that I really hope they get around to doing in the future. But for right now, I would like to highlight the ghost types that do exist by creating gym leaders for every single region. So starting off, we'll go over the criteria for how I develop these teams. Firstly, the gym leader team and position will be chosen based on the ghost type Pokemon native to the region. So I'll be looking at all the ghost types in any given region, focusing in on the ghost types introduced in that region, and creating teams based on those. And I didn't want to just say, oh, here are the 4 or 5 best ghost types of any given region. There's your eighth gym. You can work backwards to make the others. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to make choices. I wanted to, look at the region as a whole, look at the ghost types in that region, and make a choice of which gym position I thought fit that lineup of Pokemon the best. I'll be using the version of the region with the most options. Let's go for Kanto, because otherwise there was only one ghost type line to work with, Platinum for Sinnoh, etc. I will not be reusing any aces of any canon ghost type gym leaders or Elite Four members in the region unless necessary. But all other major trainers, all of their Pokemon are fair game. So, for example, in Generation 4, Fantina's Miss Magius, I cannot use that since that is her ace. But Candace's Frostlass and Cynthia's Spiritomb, those would be fair game for a team here. And lastly, the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders of the region in question, if not slightly stronger. Uh, so essentially, I'll be keeping the base stat total at least similar of the position that I choose. Let's say, I choose to make the ghost gym the sixth gym in Hoenn. I'll try to keep the base stat total at least similar to that of Winona, who's typically in Hoenn. But for any gyms that I feel, you know, could use an extra Pokemon or could stand to be a little stronger, like in the fifth or sixth gym, where those gyms only go up to 3 Pokemon. I think they could stand to have an extra Pokemon or just, be a little stronger overall. And those I'll kind of go on by case basis. But yeah, let's get right into the teams I created, starting off with Kanto. And like I said in the intro, there was exactly one line of Pokemon to work off here in the base Kanto, that being Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar. But luckily, the Let's Go games did allow some other options. Well, actually, exactly one other option, that being a Alolan Marowak. So I think it'll be best to do it in the second gym with Ghastly and a Alolan Marowak. Now, typically, the second gym in Kanto would have Starmie, so Starmie does actually have a ridiculously high base that total, but if I'm being honest, I think that may be slightly too strong for that point, but in the base games, they didn't give it all the moves that it typically would have, and I think they made it manageable. Whereas here, Alolan Marowak, it's honestly, I think defensively bulky for that point in the game. And since it doesn't even have the option of holding the thick club in the Let's Go games, I think it works as a pretty solid ace for the second gem. And then Ghastly being the only other ghost type available, I think this team works well for the second gem. Mainly because I don't really think the ghost type could work in any other position. I think this team would be too strong for the first gym. And since I restrict myself from using Gengar, I have no other choice but to put it here. Moving over to Johto. I decided to make this the first gym because the Johto region decided to introduce only a single other ghost type in Misdreavus. So I'm basically forced to have Ghastly and Mischievous be the gym here. I could maybe hear an argument for Mischievous being slightly too strong for the first gym. It's honestly has a like deceptively high special stats and speed. Um, it's pretty frail on the defensive side, and in the original Gen 2 games, all ghost type moves were physical. So any ghost type moves that did use would have to use its pretty low offense. But if this were in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is where I'm theorizing this, which is why the model here is from Heart Gold, um, it would be using its special stat. So I can maybe hear an argument for this being slightly too strong for the first gym, but similar to the what I made for Johto, what I made for Kanto, this is pretty much the only team you can create outside of the one they made for Morty, which didn't even have Mischievous on it. If Mischievous has to be the ace, this is pretty much as far as you can go, I think. Plus, they already laid the groundwork for giving the player a trade Pokemon in the first gym town specifically to take on Faulkner in Rocky. So I think it would make perfect sense for them to have like Houndour, Murkrow, or some normal type that knows Bite or some other dark move specifically to take on this gym. So I think this can work as the first gym. Moving over to Hoenn, we have the third gym with Duskull, Sableye, and Beta. Now, I've actually theory crafted this team before, back in my video where I analyzed every single Elite Four member. I posited that I actually think it makes way more sense for Watson to be an Elite Four member and essentially swap him and Phoebe's positions and have Phoebe be the third gym with I said this team would work at that point. And I still stand by that. I think this team would be a pretty decent challenge for that point in the game. So yeah, I still think it works here. Moving over to Sinnoh, and once again, Sinnoh has just an absolutely insane number of really powerful ghost types to work with. So I think it only makes sense to have this gym be an eighth gym with Spiritomb, Drifbloom, Frostlass, and Dusknoir as the ace. And I like this a lot. I like that most of these ghost types are really bulky. Obviously, Frostlass is more frail, but is a lot faster and with its unique typing. It not all of them have to be bulky, but I like that Drifloon, Spiritomb, and Dust Noir have this incredible bulk to them that would just make it really hard to take down. Plus, with Frostlass being faster, there's a pretty good chance it can use Destiny Bond. It'll let you go first. Use Destiny Bond, you take it out. There you're down a Pokemon. So I really dig this a lot. Plus, I like how they all have different secondary typings. Obviously, Dusknoir is pure ghost type. Spiritomb is part dark. Drifbloom is part flying, and Frostlass is part ice. So I like this a lot. However, like I said in the intro, if there is one where um, uh, I don't really like just making one that is the eighth gym, so I'm also going to create one that is earlier in the region as well. So I also made one that is the fourth gym with Misdreavus, Dusclops, and Driftbloom. It is kind of funny here that the other two are not native to this region, but they evolve into Pokemon that are native to this region. So I think this works well. Um, Plus, this kind of does keep the theme of the team being overall pretty bulky. Like I said before, Misdreavus is at least fairly specially bulky. Dusclops is just very bulky overall, and Driftbloom has incredibly high HP. So I think this works pretty well. And something kind of funny about this and the Unova team coming up, the trainer that I choose to go here on the trainer card, I always pick the one that I think fits the vibe of the typing the best, or at least the trainer that the given region chooses to give the most ghost types to. Most of the time for the ghost typing, it's either like the Hex Maniac or the Channeler or something like that, a class specifically made to use ghost types. But in Sinnoh and Unova, they didn't have anything like that, so they decided to give some trainers in the Psychic class ghost types. So even though they are the Psychic trainer class, they still use a lot of ghosts, and I think the like mystical vibe of them still fits with the ghost typing. Moving over to Unova, we have another psychic here who is also the fourth gem. We have Frillish, Golett, and Cofagrigus. And just like with every fifth gen trainer I create, I gave this Cofagrigus the ghost gem. I just really like the idea of these of these gym leaders using essentially this gen's battle gimmick in these gyms here, making whatever the first ghost move it uses that much stronger. I'm not sure how it works if it uses something like Nightshade. I imagine it just wouldn't activate it, but I'm honestly curious down below if you know how that would work. If it does know Nightshade, it use that, would it trigger the ghost gem? Or because it's a set damage move, would it just bypass that entirely? Because I don't imagine it would enhance the damage of the move since it's a set amount of damage. So I'm curious if you know down below how that would work. On to Kalos. I think this works as the fifth gem with Goregeist. I have decided to make this the average size since I don't know. I just feel like since it's not the ace, it should just be, an average Goregeist. Doublade, and Trevenant. I think this makes for a pretty solid gem. Ideally, there wouldn't be the type overlap with both Trevenant and Gourgeist being Ghost Grass, especially since Trevenant is the ace here. I don't love it when there's another Pokemon in their team that's also the exact same typing, but these are the only real Ghost types that I thought worked on this team, like especially ones that are, from Kalos, and it has a very big fire weakness, but I I think it works. Like maybe you throw on a Jellicent if they're in that region, or some other ghost type um that's not actually weak to fire instead of Gourgeist, or in addition to. But considering these are the ghost types I had to work with, I think this is good enough. But I do like to also create another team for the Kalos gems where I give them a Mega Evolution. So I made one that is the seventh gem, now with a large Gourgeist, since it's now just a little stronger, with a Mega Bayonet, Trevenant, and an Ace Aegislash. It still has a massive fire weakness, which is why I don't think it really works as the eighth gem, because it does have this one big glaring weakness. And also, Mega Bayonet is not the absolute strongest. If it were Mega Gengar, it maybe could be for the eighth gem, but I don't know, I just wanted to spotlight Mega Bayonet here because I really do like Mega Bayonet's design. Its prankster ability, I think, doesn't really like help it all that much because they still gave it, an incredibly high attack stat, and prankster doesn't like really help with doing damage in that way. So it's still, cool that it can do something different from regular Bayonet, but I don't know. Regardless, I really like that. I really like its design, so I wanted to put it here. Moving over to Alola, I think this works as the seventh gem. And I decided to use the preschool girl here because there's a mission in or side quest in Ultra Sun and Moon where when you go to the trainer school, there's a girl who has a Drifloon who like you follow around and like help out, and then like at the end of that, it's revealed that that girl didn't even ever actually exist. She was a ghost. So I think it's cool that we the girl, the preschool girl, is the trainer class here. But as far as the team, we have Oricorio, Alolan Marowak, and I think for the seventh gym, you can easily get away with this having the Thick Club, Delmise, and Mimikyu. Now, Delmise, I think personally maybe gives off the vibe of being an ace more than Mimikyu does, but with Mimikyu having its ability where literally, any first hit it just tanks completely in Gen 7. It can use that turn to set up Swords Dance or, just obliterate you with its Z move. So I think given that its ability is just so good, it probably works better as the ace, but I could easily hear an argument, especially considering Mimikyu in the base games is the totem Pokemon in one of the trials. Maybe you can kind of view that in the same vein as being the ace of another gym leader. So if you agree with that, I would completely understand, and maybe this could work more as like the fifth or sixth gym, and to get rid of Mimikyu and add on a Sandygast or some other ghost type just to round out the team. That could work. Now for Galar, so for Galar, um, I typically, like to give them a Gigantamax form. And up until this point, every type that I've used has had at least one Gigantamax Pokemon that is a Pokemon that is from Galar that works as an ace. However, the only ghost type Pokemon that can Gigantamax in the Galar region is Gengar. And that was already the ace of Alistair, and I already have a major issue with him using a Gengar, since Gengar is on pretty much every single ghost type team out there, at least at some point. So I already didn't love that, that he used Gigantamax Gengar, and especially dislike the fact that it is the only Gigantamax form in the entire dex. So I'm cheating slightly here, and I think this works as the eighth gem, where Poltegeist, Chandelure, Runerigus, and Gigantamax Cursula. I think Cursula should have already been Alistair's ace. It would mirror well with Bea potentially using Surfetch. Both of those are fully evolved forms of regional variants that are exclusive to their given games. And I just think of both of them would have really cool Gigantamax forms, but we didn't get that. So in this version of the region that I'm creating, Cursula would have a Gigantamax form. That or Runerigus, either way. But Cursula just has way higher output. It has 145 special attack for some reason. I don't know why they went that hard with it. Poltegeist also has weirdly high special attack. I think that's like 136 or something like that. So outside of Runerigus, this team just has a lot of really strong special attackers. And Rodriguez is no slouch either. Has a really high, at least, pretty commendable attack and defensive stats. So this would still be a pretty hard team to take out. I just really wish I could, confidently say, yes, Cursula should be the ace, and yes, it should have Gigantamax form. But, because I did make one that is eighth gym, I'm also creating one that is an earlier gym as well. And I think it could work as a second gym with Galarian Yamask, Galarian Corsola, and Poltegeist. I'm not sure if Poltegeist, that might be a little too strong for the second gym in Galar. It's not a Gigantamax form, but it's like I said, it has an absolutely astounding special attacking stat, and essentially, unless you resist it, it is going to absolutely obliterate any Pokemon with any Dynamax move. So maybe this wouldn't work as well. I definitely feel more confident in the eighth gym being in the for Galar. I just think it has too many good ghost types to warrant it. But I don't know. I think this also works well. yeah, like essentially I'm just always ever since Gen 8 has come out, I've always been a little curious as to why Poltegeist has had such high special attack. It doesn't really have like amazing stats otherwise, so I maybe they just wanted to give it one useful stat. But this Poltegeist isn't going to have any kind of setup. Usually they're shell smash stats, so I think it could work as a second gym, especially if they do give you some trade Pokemon in that town to help counter it. Now, lastly, we have Paldea. And typically within Paldea, I like to make three different teams to essentially showcase the three different ways that terrestrializing can be used. The first, if it's a Pokemon of their type that terrestrializes into their type just to make their moves even stronger. One where their ace is a Pokemon of their type that terrestrializes into a different type that helps them be either defensively or offensively good into opposing Pokemon. And then lastly, Pokemon not of their type that terrestrializes into their type to kind of mirror, Sudowoodo or Crabominable, where they look like they could easily work, or, thematically they make sense. They could make sense as a different typing. So first off, it's honestly astounding to me how there are so many incredible ghost types in this generation. And I understand that there are some, like there are other trainers you got to factor in, but it's astounding to me that there are so many incredible ghost types in this region. And the ghost type gym leader we got only use a single ghost type native to this region. They use Houndstone, which is cool. It wasn't their ace just because of the way, aces worked in that game. But they at least did use Houndstone. But then Bramblegast isn't used anywhere. Neither is Ceruledge. Annihilate is at least used on Ares' team of Team Star, but then Goldingo also isn't used anywhere. I feel like that would be prime for either the Steel specialist in that Elite Four, or more ideally, the champion should absolutely have one of these things, but she doesn't. But regardless, I think Paldea is just absolutely primed for the eighth gym to be a ghost specialist. Like, you can even take out Houndstone, and this is still a phenomenal team. Like, I like that all five of these Pokemon have different typings. Um, just, it does have kind of a bias towards physical attacks, but then, Goldingo also has a incredibly high special attack, boosted even further with that Ghost Terra typing. Yeah, I just think I really just wanted to highlight all the really cool ghost types in this region. Once again, maybe you can take out Houndstone if you feel these five Pokemon together might just be a little too much. But but yeah, I really like this team a lot. But I did also create one that is the fifth gem with Houndstone, Bramblegast. I'm keeping Annihilate as the ace here. And I think it'd be cool to Terra into a fairy type. With it being a fairy type, it is actually now resists or at least gets rid of a lot of the other types that Ghost is usually weak to. It resists dark, and its main weaknesses are steel and poison. And poison, you wouldn't really think to bring much of those, either types or Pokemon into a Ghost one anyway, since Ghost typically resists poison. And for any steel Pokemon, Annihilate can still hit them with stab fighting moves, since that is its base typing. So I think Terra Fairy just works pretty well overall. It doesn't really help offensively. I guess against yeah, actually yeah, it would against opposing dark types, but Annihilate is already part fighting, so it's not the cleanest, but I don't know. I think this works well enough. It would help if Annihilate could learn Play Rough. It's kind of weird that it can't. It'd be cool if it could get that Terra Stab off Play Rough, but it can still use Terra Blast to get that boost. So, but I do think that this is probably the most canon team of the ones I'm creating here. I've kind of talked myself into getting rid of Houndstone. Just keep it these four Pokemon since they are all, you know, just really strong and really imposing Pokemon. Because he essentially has three Pokemon that could easily pass as aces on this team alone. But I did want to make one team that did have Annihilate as the ace here. And then the last team, keeping that same team with Houndstone, Bramble Annihilate, and Lucario. I think Lucario works, stat-wise works well here as for the seventh gem. And I picked Lucario because Lucario, one of its heavy influences is that of the Egyptian god Anubis, who was the god of the underworld in the Egyptian lore. And with it being the god of the underworld, I think that is the connection enough to, give it ghostly vibes. It's not the cleanest one that I've done so far. It's not, definitely not as clean as, say, Gyarados being a dragon or Luxray being a dark type. But you know, I think that's just a fun nod to the origins of his design. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down below if you disagree with any of my picks here, if any that you particularly like or dislike, any ghost types that I completely forgot about or think should have been the ace, or any teams that you think were just in the wrong position. Yeah, please let me know all that down below. I'd like to have a discussion going. And I do intend to continue this video series for every single typing. So yeah, please leave any thoughts, criticisms, just general comments down below because I would like to keep improving and continuing this content. So yeah, with that, I will see you all next time.